31st. On this date in 1985, a plane crash claimed the life of one of America's first teen idols. Ricky Nelson died in DeKalb, Texas.
Ricky Nelson grew up in the spotlight as part of America's most famous showbiz family. To millions, he was the charming teen idol with the perfect voice and unforgettable songs. But behind the polished image was a young man quietly struggling under a weight of pressure he never asked for. His journey began with fame, climbed to the heights of music stardom, yet ended with devastating loss. This isn't just a story of success. It's the haunting tale of a star who gave everything to please the world, only to lose himself along the way. Today, we look back at the heartbreaking life of Ricky Nelson, the Golden Boy. Eric Hilliard Nelson, better known as Ricky Nelson, came into the world on May 8, 1940, in Teaneck, New Jersey. From the very beginning, he was no ordinary child. His parents were already stars in their own right. His father, Ozzie Nelson, had made a name for himself as a band leader and television producer, while his mother, Harriet Hilliard, was a talented singer and actress. Ricky was born into fame, and before long, he would become one of the brightest faces on American television. In 1944, when Ricky was just 4 years old, the Nelsons launched a radio show called The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. It was a lighthearted, fictionalized version of their real lives, but it quickly grew into a nationwide favorite. By 1952, the show had transitioned to television, and young Ricky, along with his older brother David, became a household name. With his boyish good looks and shy smile, Ricky quickly captured America's heart. Families across the country tuned in every week to see the Nelsons, watching Ricky grow up right before their eyes. But in 1957, when Ricky was 17, his life took an unexpected turn. Out of nowhere, he announced that he wanted to be a singer. Many dismissed it as a publicity stunt, just a TV kid trying to ride the wave of rock and roll. But Ricky was serious, and he had the talent to prove it. That same year, he released A Teenager's Romance and I Am Walkin'. Both became instant hits, propelling him beyond television fame and into the world of music. Ricky's appeal was magnetic. His clean-cut style, smooth vocals, and catchy rhythms made him irresistible to teenagers. Girls screamed at his concerts, and parents admired his polite, wholesome image. By 1958, Ricky Nelson wasn't just a TV star. He was one of America's biggest rock and roll idols. He went on to release chart toppers like Poor Little Fool, Hello Mary Lou, and Travelin' Man. His records sold in the millions, and his popularity soared. Yet Ricky never behaved like a stereotypical rock star. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't chasing headlines. He simply loved making music. Still, fame came with a heavy price. Having grown up in the public eye, Ricky had little privacy. Every move he made was scrutinized. His father, Ozzie, was deeply involved in shaping both the TV show and Ricky's career, writing scripts, managing his schedule, and pushing him to maintain the perfect image. But Ricky had his own artistic vision. He was drawn to rockabilly and country rock, sounds that didn't align with Ozzie's plans for him. This tension between father and son slowly built over time. By the early 1960s, Ricky's world was changing. The Beatles and the British invasion had arrived, and suddenly, teen idols of the 1950s were fading from the spotlight. His songs weren't topping the charts anymore. The crowds were still there, but the frenzy had cooled. Many artists might have given up, but Ricky didn't. He formed a new band, experimented with country rock, and pushed himself to evolve musically. The shift wasn't easy. Fans who loved his rock and roll hits weren't sure how to respond to his new sound. Critics were divided, but Ricky kept going. He wasn't chasing trends, he was chasing authenticity. Though the audiences grew smaller and the spotlight dimmed, Ricky Nelson remained devoted to his craft. Fame, however, is a double-edged sword. Ricky, once the golden boy of America, now felt trapped between the image people wanted from him and the artist he longed to be. He kept performing, kept smiling, but deep inside, the pressure was eating away at him. He was searching for freedom, for peace, maybe just for a chance to be himself. But life had more challenges ahead. Ricky's journey of fame and reinvention would soon collide with heartbreak, loss, and a tragedy that no one could have predicted. Before we uncover those painful final chapters, let's take a closer look at the man behind the music, his family, his relationships, and the struggles that shaped his story. Rich to fame. Away from the stage, Ricky's personal life was also going through big changes. During Christmas of 1961, he began dating Kristen Harmon, the daughter of football legend Tom Harmon and actress Elise Knox. Kristen was young, beautiful, and came from a family as famous as his own. The Nelsons and Harmons had been family friends for years, and their union felt almost destined. Ricky and Kristen shared many similarities, both quiet, both raised in Hollywood, and both shaped by strong, controlling fathers. On April 20th, 1963, they were married in a glamorous ceremony filled with celebrities. Soon after, they moved into a large Hollywood home and started what looked like the perfect life, almost as if Ricky had carried his television role into reality. For a while, that illusion seemed true. The couple welcomed 4 children: Tracy Christine, born in 1963, twin boys Gunnar and Matthew, who would later form the band Nelson, and their youngest, Sam. To the public eye, they were the dream family. The boy who had grown up on America's favorite sitcom now appeared to be living that dream for real. But real life is never as flawless as television, and their marriage would prove to be far more complicated. Ricky, meanwhile, was determined to reinvent himself musically. He no longer wanted to be just a teen idol. He wanted to be respected as an artist. In the mid-1960s, he gravitated toward country and rockabilly, pioneering what would later be called country rock. By 1969, he had formed the Stone Canyon Band, blending rock, country, and blues. Though his sound would eventually influence groups like the Eagles at the time, it confused his fans and frustrated his record label. Many wanted the travelin' man of old, not this more serious version of Ricky. The rejection cut deep. He was not only fighting to stay relevant in music, but also struggling to be accepted for who he really was. At the same time, home life was growing difficult. Kristen felt overwhelmed by the demands of motherhood, the public attention, and Ricky's constant touring. Their once happy marriage began to unravel. Both were young, burdened by fame, and unable to cope with the mounting tension. Alcohol and drugs soon entered the picture, adding fuel to the fire. Ricky had never been wild like other rock stars, but years of pressure, long nights, and loneliness pushed him toward alcohol and prescription pills. He leaned on them for sleep, for calm, and just to get through endless tours. Meanwhile, Kristen resented being left behind with the children. Arguments grew, and their family life began to fracture. In 1972, Ricky poured his pain into a song. After being booed at Madison Square Garden for playing new material instead of his old hits, he wrote Garden Party. Its message was clear: you can't please everyone, so you've got to please yourself. The song became his final big hit, an anthem of defiance and self-worth. But even as his music found new meaning, his marriage crumbled further. By 1975, following the birth of their last child, the relationship had broken down. In October of 1977, Kristen filed for divorce, demanding alimony, custody of the children, and a share of their assets. The battle dragged on for years, draining Ricky emotionally and financially. Attorneys and accountants took more than $1 million, leaving him struggling. The couple officially divorced in December of 1982, and although Ricky fought to remain close to his children, the scars of that split ran deep. Professionally, things weren't much better. The rise of disco and punk pushed him further into the background. Once a chart-topping idol, he now performed mostly at small clubs, fairs, and old theaters. His income shrank, and his expensive divorce only made things worse. Fans who saw him in the 1980s described a man who was kind but weary, still talented but carrying sadness in his eyes. The boyish spark was gone. Still, he never abandoned music. It remained his lifeline. He kept writing, kept performing, and did his best to stay involved in his children's lives. Tracy pursued acting, while Gunnar and Matthew eventually formed their own band, carrying forward their father's musical legacy. In 1980, Ricky met Helen Blair, a part-time model and animal trainer. She soon became his companion on the road and later moved in with him. Although his family disapproved, Ricky found comfort in her presence. She would remain the only significant partner in his life after the divorce. By 1985, Ricky was preparing for a comeback. He was touring again, writing, and hoping to remind the world of the star he had once been. But fate had other plans. Though he was determined to rebuild, his journey toward redemption would end in tragedy. His final tour was about to take him not toward a revival, but into the last chapter of his life. The tragic accident. As the year 1985 drew to a close, Ricky Nelson was once again doing what he loved most, touring. The stage had always been his refuge, a place where he could connect with fans and escape the weight of his struggles. Despite years of personal and professional setbacks, he never stopped performing. Now, with a series of holiday concerts booked across the southern states, Ricky was quietly hopeful that this tour might mark the beginning of a true comeback. At 45 years old, Ricky's era as a chart-topping teen idol had long passed, but he was convinced that he still had much to share. He had been writing new material and had begun serious conversations about a new album. The country rock sound he helped pioneer was finally gaining recognition. And perhaps, at last, the world was catching up to the music he had believed in all along. By his side was his girlfriend and companion, Helen Blair. For several years, she had been Ricky's anchor, organizing shows, managing day-to-day details, and offering emotional support. She was one of the few people he truly trusted. On December 26, 1985, Ricky, Helen, and his band boarded their plane, optimistic about what lay ahead. Their transport was a 1944 Douglas DC-3, a twin-engine aircraft once used in the military. It was old but reliable, and Ricky had flown on it many times before. The pilot, Brad Rank, was experienced, and Ricky preferred private flights over commercial travel, since it allowed him to carry his guitars and equipment more easily. For most of the tour, things went smoothly. Ricky was in good spirits, talking about new projects and expressing hope for the new year. But the final days brought complications. A scheduled performance in Guntersville, Alabama, on December 30th had to be delayed due to technical problems. Still, the band managed to play, and preparations were made for the next stop, a New Year's Eve show in Dallas, Texas. On the morning of December 31st, Ricky, Helen, and 5 band members climbed aboard the DC-3 at the small airport in Guntersville. The weather was fair, and the flight plan was straightforward. They expected to land in Dallas by mid-afternoon. But somewhere over DeKalb, Texas, the routine flight turned disastrous. At around 5:14 in the evening, witnesses on the ground reported seeing smoke trailing from the plane. Moments later, the aircraft descended, clipped trees, and crash-landed in a field less than 2 miles from a landing strip. The impact was followed by a massive fire. Within minutes, the plane was consumed in flames. Ricky Nelson, Helen Blair, and 5 members of the band perished in the fire. The pilot and co-pilot miraculously survived, though both suffered severe burns. By nightfall, headlines across America carried the news: Ricky Nelson dies in plane crash. Conflicting eyewitness reports led to confusion over what exactly happened. Some said the plane was already on fire before impact. Others believed the flames broke out afterward. The National Transportation Safety Board conducted a year-long investigation. Their final report suggested the most likely cause was a malfunctioning gasoline-powered cabin heater that had ignited a fire in the rear of the plane. The exact ignition source could not be determined, but investigators noted the access panel to the heater compartment was unlatched. Both pilots gave differing accounts. Co-pilot Ken Ferguson claimed that the heater malfunctioned after takeoff and that Captain Rank repeatedly tried to fix it. Rank, however, denied that the heater was the issue, stating instead that he noticed smoke near where Ricky and Helen were seated. The NTSB ultimately criticized the crew for failing to follow emergency fire procedures, which might not have prevented the crash, but could have improved the passengers' chances of survival. The scene was devastating. Firefighter Lewis Glover, one of the first responders, later recalled that all of the bodies were located near the front of the cabin, suggesting they had been desperately trying to escape. Ricky's remains were delayed en route from Texas to California, postponing his funeral. On January 6, 1986, more than 200 mourners attended services at the Church of the Hills in Los Angeles, while hundreds more fans gathered outside. He was later laid to rest at Forest Lawn Cemetery. In the days that followed, cruel rumors spread that drug use, specifically freebasing, had caused the fire. These accusations, fueled by sensational headlines, deeply hurt his family and friends. Toxicology reports later confirmed that Ricky had no illegal substances in his system, and the NTSB formally dismissed the allegations. Still, the damage to his reputation lingered. Helen Blair's death carried its own sorrow. Because she and Ricky were not married, she was not permitted to be buried beside him. Instead, her ashes were kept by her family. For Ricky's children, the loss was overwhelming. Tracy was 22, the twins Gunnar and Matthew were 18, and Sam was only 12. Their father had been their protector and their guide, and now he was suddenly gone. To make matters worse, Kristen Nelson, his ex-wife, attempted to claim his life insurance and part of his estate, but the courts rejected her efforts. Ricky's brother David ensured that the children were cared for. Ricky Nelson's death was more than just a tragic accident. He died the way he had lived, on the road, chasing the music that had defined him. There was a sense of unfinished business, of songs unwritten and dreams unfulfilled. His story was not merely about a crash, it was about a man who had fought his entire life to be heard, and, just as he was beginning to rediscover his voice, was silenced forever. Legacy. Ricky Nelson's legacy still shines bright long after his passing. He was posthumously honored in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Country Music Hall of Fame, and the Rockabilly Hall of Fame. Long before he even recorded a single song, Ricky was already a household name and a true American teen idol. Unlike many of the early rock pioneers, Ricky carried himself with a different kind of energy, one that connected the old world of rock and roll with the new era of country rock. In fact, he was among the very first to shape and define the sound of country rock that later influenced countless musicians. Legends like Paul McCartney, John Fogerty, Elvis Presley, Roy Orbison, and Johnny Cash admired him deeply. Ricky was already a seasoned performer by the age of 6, building a career that spanned radio, television, film, and music. His star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame isn't just for his voice. It celebrates his achievements across all those platforms. Throughout his life, Ricky sold more than 50 million records worldwide. He scored 18 top 10 singles, had dozens of Billboard-charted songs, and today he still stands as the 4th highest single seller of all time. But beyond the numbers and the charts, Ricky Nelson remained a mystery to many. He was quiet, private, and gentle, living with honesty and integrity that shone through in everything he did. In the early 1970s, Ricky wrote a haunting song called Gypsy Pilot. Its final verse summed up his life perfectly. When they claim my body, they won't have much to say, except that he lived a good life. He lived every day. And you know he saw the sunshine, and you know he felt the rain. He loved everybody, and he hopes you do the same. Even now, in the 21st century, Ricky's voice still echoes across generations. Songs like Hello Mary Lou became anthems for millions, reaching the #1 spot on charts all around the world. And for many, it remains the ultimate theme song of a golden era. Ricky Nelson's music touched millions of hearts, but now we'd love to hear from you. What's the one Ricky Nelson song that still stays with you today? Drop your answer in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button. Share it with someone who loves classic music. And of course, subscribe so you never miss our future stories. And before you leave, take a moment to click on the video that's showing up on your screen right now. We know you'll enjoy it. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.